So just pretend that this is my Morgan Freeman narrator voice. Meet Brad and Jessica. They've been married for a while now, and like many couples, they don't always see eye to eye. They love each other, but one night, Jessica wanted a divorce. As they went to bed that night, they were asking themselves, how the heck did we get here? So let's start from the beginning.
Thank you, Morgan.
Yes. Sound effects.
All right, we had to write it out so we didn't argue up here. So here we go.
Very true.
So, hi, I'm Brad. I'm an alcoholic, and I was always getting in trouble. My first real alcoholic drink was when I was 9 years old. I started drinking more frequently in high school as a social drinker and wanted to feel connected with my friends. But little did I know that in college I would start partying and drinking every day. When I was younger, my dad got a divorce and remarried a woman who quickly became my mom, who adopted me. It was great. Growing up, there was zero alcohol in our home and at family gatherings. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents were really involved with church. My dad was an elder. My mom was part of the youth group ministry. And there were only a few requirements growing up if you lived underneath my dad's roof. There were 3 rules. You're home by 10, you didn't drink, and you better be at church on Sunday.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm an alcoholic too. I was the golden child, and I didn't have my first drink until I turned 21. I was raised in a non-Christian home and very broken home with an alcoholic father who would start drinking as soon as he woke up. I absolutely hated alcohol, mainly beer, because of how it impacted my family. My biological mother, who lives in Seattle, is also an alcoholic, but only drinks wine at night, so that's okay, right? I lived through 2 divorces by the time I was 15 years old. In 2014, Brad and I were single and looking for love, so we got on eHarmony, and we were quickly matched. We didn't get married by worldly standards, I would say. We got engaged after 3 months of dating, and were married 5 months later. We didn't live together before we got married, and there were things about Brad's drinking habits that were unknown to me.
That's right. I moved away from Indianapolis and my family in March of 2015 to Louisville because Jessica was getting her master's at the time. She had established a career as a high school math teacher. I was living in an apartment by myself. Jess and I would have a curfew because we were committed to not having sex with each other before marriage. Not saying that we didn't prior, but we were really committed to that not being the reason why we loved each other. So after Jessica would leave promptly at 9 o'clock because we had accountability partners who would call us and say, have you left yet?
Yep.
And trust me, I made sure she left by 9 o'clock because when she was gone, I was at the liquor store.
Yep, apparently. Brad knew how I felt about alcohol, and we even decided to have an alcohol-free wedding reception because I didn't want the embarrassment my family would cause because they could never just have one. And I didn't want to worry about people drinking and driving after they left. Little did I know, right after our honeymoon, my life would fall apart. Our wedding caused a huge rift with my family because of how quickly we got married, and we didn't do it traditionally or worldly way. We actually went almost 2 years without speaking, my family and I. I lost a friend to brain cancer. I found out one of my best friends had terminal cancer at the age of 27. And one of my friends committed suicide just a couple of weeks after we saw him at our wedding. Meanwhile, Brad would continue to drink, and I would get angry. I would keep track of how much he was drinking, and I would even call his parents and tattle on him. I couldn't believe I was married to an alcoholic. I swore this would never happen to me.
As Jess didn't know how much I drank, I had no clue how much she slept throughout the day. I found myself doing things alone that I thought we would be spending much more time together as newlyweds. So we did what most people do. We got a distraction. A dog. His name was Pepper. Pepper and I would get up in the morning and go to the park. I knew roughly about the time Jessica would wake up, and we'd be back around that time. We were just going through the motions, and it seemed like Jessica's depression was getting worse. I didn't really know how to handle that. The worse her depression got, the more I drank. Most days we would go out to eat because we were single and had no kids, and it was great. I love my kid, but it was great. And which that also meant I could drink alcohol there. So normally every night we go out to eat, and I would get about 230 ounces of beers and finish off with a double shot of whiskey. We would then go home and continue my drinking there. My favorite thing to tell her was just one more. Kind of how a kid continues to ask you, can I do it just one more time? That was me, but with alcohol.
Can I say just one more is a huge trigger for me? As a little girl, my dad would take me and my sister to bars. We were there for hours. I just wanted to go home, and when I would ask him when we were leaving, he would say, just one more. It was never just one more. Another trigger for me is beer breath. My dad had a distinct smell. His drink of choice was beer, and when Brad would drink beer, he smelled like my dad. Not good for the romance department. After about a year of marriage, I found myself slowly starting to drink with Brad too. Most of our friends would drink, and it seemed that was the way to have fun, because when I was a sober one, hanging out with drunks was not fun. I got tired of being angry and made the conscious decision to join in. Plus, this helped with overcoming Brad's beer breath. It was after my birth of our daughter where my drinking became a daily habit. My drink of choice was wine, and then I started drinking the bourbon that Brad would buy. Because I wasn't allowed to drink while I was pregnant, my cravings for it just got worse because Brad was still drinking every day. So for me, drinking really started to become my escape and numb the pain of the trauma I continued to endure.
Guys, she finally joined in. She even threw me a bourbon party when I turned 30. Every person brought a bottle of bourbon as a gift, and needless to say, those bottles did not last long. I quickly found myself finding every opportunity to drink and would chug a beer basically anywhere before we go out the house because I didn't know when I was going to get my next drink. I would also frequently visit our local liquor store and quickly became friends with the owner, James, who provided me with free tastings of bourbon. I would spend several hours there most Friday nights, and Jessica would be wondering where the heck I was. I normally left my cell phone at home for a reason, so she couldn't contact me, and I wouldn't have to feel guilty not answering. I would tell Jess the reason I drank was because I liked the taste of it, but there was definitely more to the addiction. I just was not willing to admit it at that time.
2019 was the worst year of my life. I decided to leave education for a job opportunity to work for a broker-dealer firm in Louisville. A couple of months after that transition, my dad unexpectedly passed. Then a month later, my ex-stepmom, who raised me from 3rd grade until I graduated high school, unexpectedly passed. A month after that, Brad lost his grandma. So 3 deaths in 3 months. Joining the broker-dealer firm was the worst decision in my life. My boss was emotionally abusive, unprofessional, and would sexually harass me. He would send me along with another coworker to UPS to ship bourbon. In case you didn't know this, shipping alcohol is actually illegal. And so we were told to say it was olive oil. I'm not a very good liar, so I was terrified I was going to go to prison. We started attending Shelby Christian in fall of 2019, and we got another dog. Her name is Coco. I was hoping that getting connected back to a church and having a distraction would help, but the enemy had his grip on me. My grief, drinking, toxic work environment, and depression turned into me being suicidal early 2020. It was the day before Valentine's Day when I called my doctor to tell her I wanted to kill myself, and if I went home, I was going to end my life. That was my rock bottom. Thank God she answered the phone that day. I was admitted to the Brook, and that started my journey to sobriety and healing.
At this point in my life, I had surrounded myself with people who drank a lot. I started to drink alone because I did not know how to process what was going on in our lives. I had no understanding of the depression and how Jessica felt. In my mind, I thought she would just be able to get over it and not have these feelings. I couldn't comprehend how someone would just want to end their life. I was angry with her. I was scared and confused. I remember talking to Jessica on the phone every night while she was at the Brook. We had come to the agreement that I would not drink around her. I didn't keep that agreement. I drank the night she got discharged. I reached out to Dave and asked him if Kim would be willing to talk to Jessica once she returned because I felt like I didn't know how to handle what was going on. The day that Jessica got discharged, she told me she was going to quit her job, which was going to reduce our income by over 50%. As you can imagine at this point, I'm freaking out because not only do I struggle with alcohol, I also worry about our finances.
Amen.
Thank God Kim agreed to meet with her.
You want to know how God works? I was hired to work at Brad's job 24 hours after I quit the broker-dealer firm. After that interview, I came home to a check in the mail for $1,000 that my grandpa had sent us as a late wedding gift. He had no idea what I was struggling with during that time. Even though we both were deep into our addiction, God still showed up with an abundance of grace. The problem for me was that I was struggling to realize my dependency on alcohol. But my time at the Brook helped me realize I was using alcohol as medicine. Everyone around me would say I didn't have a problem. But if I didn't have a problem, why was it so hard for me to stop? I wasn't getting drunk, but I wanted to drink every day, and my tolerance was allowing me to drink more. Brad and I would try to limit our alcohol intake by saying we would only drink on the weekends or only when we went out to eat. We would even hide alcohol for each other to try to hold each other accountable to the weekend only drinking. On Friday after work, my mouth would be salivating. I couldn't wait to get home to drink. Because of an invite by Kim, I actually attended community recovery for the first time in September of 2020 by myself and received my first blue chip.
Yeah, she asked me to come. I told her I didn't have a problem.
That's true.
But I'm good. At my previous job, I was promoted as a supervisor position. Along with that came a new boss who enjoyed bourbon more than me. It was acceptable to have a cocktail after work hours. It started on Friday nights and then was a daily thing for my boss and I. At this point, my drinking had become an all-day event. There would be multiple times my boss would take me to play golf and call it team building. We would get extremely drunk and return back to work. At this point, it was starting to cause problems in our marriage. There were times I would be too drunk to even drive home and have to stay with a friend that lived in Jeffersonville, Indiana. The nights that I did make it home, I headed straight to the refrigerator to crack open that beer and take that first shot of whiskey before talking to Jessica. I would do that so that the smell would already be on my breath and she didn't know I was drinking at work. I remember several Sunday mornings sitting in church, just wishing that dude on the stage would hurry up so I could start the cure to my hangover by drinking another beer or bourbon. He touched on repenting from our addictions, and I'd feel guilty for about 2 seconds, but when church was over, I couldn't wait to open that Miller Lite when I got home.
At the time when I started working with Brad, I knew his drinking was a problem at home, but I had no idea how bad it really was and that he was being encouraged to drink at work. I will say, I do not encourage to ever work with your spouse, okay? This was supposed...
That is true.
Yes, this was supposed to be a Christian company, and I was confused as to why they would allow this type of behavior. I couldn't wait to leave this job. In January of 2021, I started my new job at Spalding University, and then the next day, my grandpa passed away. I was in the hospital for most of the month due to a really bad flare of ulcerative colitis, which alcohol likely played a role in making this worse. And I was in 24/7 pain due to an anal fissure. I remember praying to God that I would never drink again if he would just take the pain away. The physical pain was excruciating. Even with pain pills, my pain level was still at a 10. After 30 days of constant pain, I did get better, so I was committed to keeping my promise to God. This led to me being 100 days sober. However, when things got difficult, I relapsed. I couldn't comprehend why I was struggling with an addiction I hated so much. I would go multiple days without drinking, but then I would break my streak and binge until I was ready to stop again. It was a constant cycle.
On September 18th, 2021, Jess was at a women's retreat with a friend, and I was at home hanging out with the usual crowd. With Jess gone, I was solely responsible for our little 3-year-old at the time. So I did what any responsible adult would do and refrained from drinking that night. Just kidding. I got so drunk because I knew I wouldn't get in trouble because Jessica was gone. I had our daughter out until about 1 a.m. in the morning. I stumbled across the street with her in my arms and put her back to bed the best I could. I then passed out myself and woke up to what I would consider my first withdrawal. I was in a panic. I couldn't calm down. I was shaking. I had finally hit rock bottom. I remember calling Jess that morning and told her we didn't go to church today because my stomach was so upset. At first, I blamed it on some chicken I ate and swore it was bad. As the day went on, I slowly started to think about the night and what if something would have happened to our daughter while I was passed out? What if there was a fire? What if a robber intruded our house? Lord knows I would not have been coherent enough to do anything about it. So on September 19th, 2021, I chose not to drink anymore. Good thing I did that because the next week when I got my cholesterol checked, because I was on a statin medication, they also checked my liver. Well, my liver enzymes were extremely elevated. This would, of course, been the start of liver failure due to the amount of alcohol I was consuming.
November 5th, 2021 was the 21st anniversary of my sister passing away from a car accident. And it was community assembly at Spalding, which meant an open bar. Free Chardonnay. I knew Brad was working on his sobriety, but I wasn't convinced he was really going to stop. I felt that if I was going to drink, it would be best not to do it in front of him since it bothered me so much when he did it to me. I was too intoxicated to drive home, and so a coworker brought me home. I remember Brad being so angry with me. I was angry with him too, because I dealt with him drinking in front of me when I was trying to get sober, and so it seemed unfair that he got so angry this one time I did it to him, even though I felt I was being respectful by not drinking at home. The next day, I told Brad I was getting sober too, with him, because that was all I ever wanted since we got married, was for him to stop drinking, and I didn't want to be the reason he relapsed. It was much easier for me to stay sober with him sober too.
So about 6 months into my sobriety, around March, I stepped in my first community recovery meeting. I remember the day I stepped in and Dave's face. His eyeballs were about as big as pepperonis. It was like, what the heck is this dude doing here? Due to Caleb inviting me, which I am very grateful for and thankful for. I had been white-knuckling it and figured there had to be a better way. I just remember sitting in these meetings with my mouth salivating, talking to Caleb and asking if this ever got any easier. Because every single time I came here, I just thought about alcohol and I was like, dude, this is not helping. This is making it worse. That kind of went away as time passed. I can tell you it does get much better. So if you're at that step, hang in there. 6 months is hard, but just keep doing what you're doing. You'll be all right. We hid our alcoholism really well. We were functioning alcoholics. As a result of trying to get sober, we had to take inventory of who we were hanging around, the people, places, and things. All of these played a huge role in our lives. I gave up sports, camping, going to restaurants, bonfires, country music, etc. Through CR, I've learned to slowly implement some of those things back into my life, but there are a lot of things that I do not participate in anymore.
What was interesting to me was once we both got sober, things started surfacing in our marriage that we obviously hadn't been dealing with. In my mind, I thought I'd be happy in our marriage once Brad quit drinking, but I was wrong. So the night I wanted a divorce, back to Caleb's introduction, the breaking point was over a baby blanket. The issue clearly wasn't the issue. I won't get into all of the details of that fight, but what Brad said to me that night was one of the cruelest things I could ever imagine, and it hurt me so deeply that I told him I couldn't be with him anymore and I wanted out.
So I did what most guys do, and I started to fix the problem. I reached out to Dave and asked him to counsel us. He agreed, and we started the road to true recovery. We learned how to fight fairly, how to handle conflict, what each of our top 5 needs are, and how to improve our communication. We discussed all the hard topics. We both learned our marriage was actually pretty normal, and we were going to be just fine. We just need a little bit of guidance on a few topics.
I knew before marriage counseling that we were compatible. Remember, we met on eHarmony? At one point during our counseling session, Dave said, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought you all answered the survey questions together. We didn't, I can assure you, because I'm a rule follower. We share a great deal of core values in common, and this is really one of the most important assets in a marriage. My needs matter, but so do Brad's. And sometimes we have expectations that aren't communicated, which then leads to conflict. I started attending CR again as a way to support Brad, but then I found my own support. love, and acceptance here. I was tutoring on Wednesdays, which prevented me from attending regularly. But you know what I did? One day I just decided CR is non-negotiable. This is vital to me and our marriage. We started stepping into leadership roles and serving at church. We had started a life group with Caleb and Rachel right before we started marriage counseling. And now that has grown to be where we meet at church now on Monday nights. We both are working through the 12 steps. You want to know how God works? A long time ago, David mentioned, "Who's your one?" We even got the t-shirts. By getting connected with Shelby Christian, choosing sobriety and community recovery, we were both fortunate enough to lead 2 of our best friends to get baptized. My best friend was one of our neighbors who didn't know Jesus, who never attended church, and all I did was love her. When I reflect back on that day in February 2020, if I would have made that choice to end my life, I would have missed that amazing opportunity. In Matthew 22:37-39, it states, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." We've worked hard to live this out daily.
Y'all, to conclude, we are not perfect. We still have issues we are working on, but overall, things have drastically improved over the last year. I feel that Jessica and I try to implement daily tools we've been given through church, CR Life Group, and the Bible studies we do weekly. Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for your good of those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So even when things get tough, just turn to God or call Dave.
Seal it with a kiss.
That was pretty awesome. That's got to be the first like narrated back to back, like that was awesome. We got to do that more often.
Welcome to the teacher in her.
Yeah.
I said, let's just get up there and wing it. She said, no. We would fight.
Glad you listened, Brad.
I've learned through the skills.
So, I mean, listen to that story. It's powerful as all get out. You know, the history, the childhood, the being raised and dealing with it. It's like we surround ourselves with what we know almost, right? As much as we don't want it, right? It's crazy. Step 12, you go back, you got folders in front of you. Sharing the hope. That's exactly what they are doing now. Now that they've transitioned from being in the struggle to coping with the struggle and being able to give back. And man, to know that, you know, you guys just baptizing 2 of your friends in there. I mean, you know, I was in there with Brad that day. That it was just amazing, you know. And now Cody, I mean, golly, man, it just keeps rolling, you know. And that's what step 12 is all about when we get to that point. And if you're not at that point, like they just said, make it a priority to be here. Whether it's this recovery program or the one up the road, it doesn't matter to me as long as you're making your recovery the priority. Okay? Don't forget that. We're here for you. We will love on you. We've got phone numbers, we got digits, we got mentors, accountability partners, whatever it is that you need. We've got people in this room that have just about every gamut of background, whether it's alcohol, whether it's pornography, whether it's sexual addictions or anxiety or gambling or whatever that is. It doesn't matter what the struggle is. We've got plenty of people here that, I think I counted 36 people in here tonight. That's amazing. That's awesome. Imagine how many folks are out there that need to be here. We ought to be meeting in the big room.
Yes.
Honestly. So, yeah.
We'll get there.
So, with that said, thank you. Thank you, Brad and Jessica. 7:16, almost 7:20. So we'll take 5-10 minutes. We'll split into groups. We got plenty to talk about. So the women will meet over here next steps, and the men right behind this wall here. We're here every single Wednesday, God willing, and as long as we're able. We was here when tornado sirens were going off, you know. So we make this a priority, and we want you to know that we're here for you. Take 5 minutes.